Let's get started with this topic, the impact of the media on crime, including deviance amplification and moral panics. This is on page number 239, and we're talking about how media can affect crime or criminal activities in the society, with reference to concepts such as deviance amplification and moral panics. Now, the first part I'm assuming is very simple to understand. Moving on towards deviance amplification, what exactly is deviance amplification, or what does the word amplify mean? To amplify something is, or when something gets amplified, that means that thing increases. So the question is media to be held responsible for an increase in crime, or rather, according to this, is it responsible for an increase in the amount of deviance we have in the society? क्या मीडिया आपका रिस्पॉन्सिबल ठहराया जा सकता है सोसाइटी के अंदर डिविएंट एक्ट्स को बढ़ाने में? One. Number two, we'd speak about moral panics. Now, what exactly is a moral panic? When we speak about moral panic, we're actually referring to a situation when the media has highlighted an issue, or we can say has portrayed something in an over exaggerated form to the point that people have started fearing it more than they should, that the fear is out of proportion, right? Or in other words, we can say that the media is playing its role, or is the media playing its role in terms of getting people into a state of panic, right, by over exaggerating something, by speaking about something that is more than that is I mean, referring to something as being more dangerous than it actually is. So to get started with, Wilkins developed the concept of deviance amplification to show how the development of deviance involves a positive feedback loop. Now we're talking about the development of crime and deviance through this positive feedback loop. There are a few points over here that I'd like discussing with you all, and once we're done discussing these points, I'd like to discuss it through this what do you call it through this diagram, if it's a diagram, right? So when we speak about this positive feedback loop, positive food नहीं, रमजान में सिर्फ food आपके मुंह में आता है, but this is positive feedback loop. Now, number one, initial or primary deviance is identified and condemned by the media. Now we're talking about primary deviance. The term over here is primary deviance. The question is, what is primary deviance? Now let's just say there's a criminal act, or there's a deviant act that someone, an individual or a small group has been involved in. Okay, that particular deviant act is identified and it is condemned by the media. Do you know what? When that particular deviant act or criminal act is has been identified, and when media plays its role in terms of condemning it, that might lead to the group, if it was a group that was involved in it, or if it was an individual, being socially isolated, right? तो हम बात कर रहे हैं अबाउट प्राइमरी डिवियंस, एक डिविएंट एक्ट सोसाइटी में हुआ है जिसको मीडिया ने आइडेंटिफाई किया है और कंडेम किया है, और कंडेम करने के बाद उस डिविएंट ग्रुप को, जो कि उस क्रिमिनल एक्ट में या डिविएंट एक्ट में इन्वॉल्व था, उसको लोगों ने सोशली आइसोलेट कर दिया. पीपल स्टार्ट शोइंग रिजेंटमेंट टुवर्ड्स दैट पर्टिकुलर ग्रुप, राइट? तो अब step number one and the initial or primary deviant act. Step number two, because of that initial or primary deviant act, we are talking about how the group that has been involved into it has now been isolated, has now been socially isolated, leading to that particular group being disliked, being hated, or being ostracized from the society. ठीक है? So the deviant group becomes socially isolated and resentful. This behavior leads through a general media labeling process. Now the media labeling process, we all know what this is: portraying that particular group or labeling that particular group as being harmful, dangerous, unpredictable, add up more adjectives to it. Get it? So initially primary deviance lead, and number two, that primary deviance leading to that particular group being socially isolated. Now what would happen now is this would lead to an increase in social reaction. The more people get to know about it, the more openly media starts condemning that particular act publicly. There would be more of a reaction that would be there through public, by the public. Now for instance, you know what, if there's something that happens in society, let's just say these days we have an increase in street crime in our city, right? Street crime has, again, because of Eid, because of Ramzan, because of COVID, because of anything at all, street crime हमारे पास बढ़ता जा रहा है. In a situation like this, what happens is the media, or the public through the media, let's make it like this, the public through the media starts questioning authority, starts questioning the law enforcement agencies के भाईजान क्या हो रहा है, आईजी साहब टीवी पे आ जाएंगे, एसपी साहब टीवी पे आ जाएंगे, ठीक है. तो इस increased social reaction से होता क्या है, including the development of a moral panic by the media, the politicians and formal control agencies, like I said, law enforcement agencies, politicians, they'd be there, they people would start questioning them कि भाईजान ये जो हो रहा है ये क्यों हो रहा है. Now when these law enforcement agencies, they're being questioned, don't you think that might result in them, I mean, if because of this a senior person from the law enforcement agencies, he is been made to sit in front of the press, and he has this press conference where he is answering questions to the press. What does he do then? Then what he does is, there are changes that are made in the policies there, right? Immediate policies के अंदर आपके पास immediately changes आती हैं, आपके पास law enforcement agencies की involvement ज़्यादा हो जाएगी, there would be more forces, or there'd be more people who would be deployed. Get it? Do we get this?
Yes.
Yeah. The more people who are there, right? आपके पास बेचारे पुलिस वाले आपको रोडों पे नजर आएंगे, ज्यादा चेकिंग होगी आपके पास, अलग अलग जगहों पे, स्ट्रीट्स के कॉर्नर्स पे, मेन रोड्स पे आपके पास स्नैप चेकिंग हो रही होगी. व्हाट डू यू थिंक दैट वुड रिजल्ट इन? दैट वुड रिजल्ट इन मोर ऑफ criminal activities being identified, more of deviant activities being identified. और जब अब आपके पास ज्यादा पुलिस वाले खड़े करने से आपके ज्यादा लोग आइडेंटिफाई हो रहे हैं एज being involved into criminal activities or deviant activities, तो वो जो इनिशियल आइडिया था कि क्राइम बढ़ता जा रहा है, पुलिस को कुछ करना चाहिए, वो तो ऑटोमेटिकली आप उसको सपोर्ट कर रहे हो. And then the public would be like, see, we told you, see, we knew there was something that was missing. The law enforcement agencies were not able to play their role the way they're supposed to, because of which there was so much of crime. And now that there's more of police, there's more of crime that has been identified. Get it here?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Increased social reaction, including the development of a moral panic by the media, politicians, and formal control agencies. There is less toleration of the original deviant behavior. This develops into a secondary deviance. Now, what is secondary deviance? इससे होता यह है कि आपके पास इवेंचुअली ज्यादा क्राइम सोसाइटी के अंदर होता हुआ नजर आना शुरू हो जाता है आपको. पहले एक एक्ट हुआ, उस एक्ट को मीडिया ने इतना बढ़ा के दिखाया जिसकी वजह से आपके पास लॉ एनफोर्समेंट एजेंसीज एक्शन में आ गई, लॉ एनफोर्समेंट एजेंसीज एक्शन में आ गई, तो ज्यादा क्राइम आपके पास सोसाइटी में बढ़ता हुआ क्राइम नजर आ जाएगा आपको, right? Which might lead to the reaction from the media, politicians, and police increases, leading to new laws, right? There would be new laws passed, there'd be increments in budgets, there'd be more resource, that would be there'd be more force, there'd be more people who'd be demanded by these politicians, भाईजान रेंजर्स को लेके आ जाएं, ये कर लें वो कर लें, ताकि आपके पास सोसाइटी के अंदर डिविएंट एक्ट्स या क्रिमिनल एक्टिविटीज को आप लोग कंट्रोल कर सकें. तो the reaction from the media, politicians, and police increases, leading to new laws, the criminalization of deviants, or an increased police resource to deal with the problem. Now, do we all understand this?
Yes, sir.
Right? Now,
Yes, sir.
if I put all of this together, this looks something like this. And the parts that I have highlighted, here you go. Get it, everyone? Now, in this way, each group, deviant and control, feeds off the action of the other to create a spiral of deviance. This is the spiral we're referring to, the deviancy amplification spiral, right? To create a spiral of deviance. Moral panics created by the media are a crucial component of this, right? Moral panics that have been created by the media, guess what? After this primary act of deviance, अगर मीडिया उसको आइडेंटिफाई करके कंडेम ना करती जिस तरीके से वो करती है, जो हम कह रहे हैं कि शायद एक ओवर एग्जैजरेटेड फॉर्म था, बिकॉज द मीडिया वांट्स टू सेल, they want more of viewers, they want more of listeners, they want more of readers, right? They want more of our audience. And in order to be able to gain more audience, the general understanding over here is that they try to make things spicier, right? So In this way, each group, deviant and controlled, feeds off the actions of the other to create a spiral of deviance. Moral panics created by the media are a crucial component of this. See, primary deviance leading to isolation and alienation, increased social reaction, secondary deviance, social reaction, and eventually आपके पास through all of this crime जो पहले इतना नहीं था अब बढ़ गया सोसाइटी के अंदर. The idea of a moral panic was developed by Stanley Cohen. In a moral panic, media coverage creates a society wide feeling of panic about a particular issue or group. This happens through sensitization, sensationalized and exaggerated reporting. This is what I was talking about. Prediction of further trouble and symbolization, in which particular styles of, for example, appearance of behavior are linked to the issue or group. In Cohen's case study, the moral panic was focused on two teenage groups who became folk devils, standing for everything that was supposedly going wrong in the UK in the 1960s. Later, teenage subcultures and other groups such as immigrants and welfare claimants have also been the folk devils in moral panic. The panic leads to demands on police, politicians, and others to act strongly against the folk devil. Now, mods and rockers, we have spoken about them earlier as well. I would want you, if you do not know about them as yet, I'd want you to YouTube them and you'd have an idea about the role that media had played in terms of developing this moral panic in the society. Right now, taking this a step further, although the media are central to the development of moral panics, their precise role is explained differently by different sociological approaches. Now, interpretivist sociologists, they have a look at it in a different manner as compared to neo Marxist approaches. Let's have a look at how the interpretivist approaches and the neo Marxist approaches deal with this, or what sort of explanation do they have about the development of this moral panic. I'd want to give everyone 2 minutes, read through this, and once you're done reading through this, then I'd explain all of this to you. All right?
Yes, sir.
Now, what I said was there are two approaches that we would be bringing in over here to discuss how the media can be linked to the creation or the development of these moral panics. We'd start off with the interpretivist approach over here. According to, I mean, to as a start, according to the interpretivist approach, the media provides a channel for concern, right? The media isn't responsible or shouldn't be considered to be responsible for creating concern in the society, but they're just channeling it out, right? They're just finding a way, they're just showing the way, right? So interpretivist approaches see moral panics as arising from public concern. It's the public concern that is now through the media being put to authorities or whoever, right? So by representing groups that threaten social cohesion as deviant, the media focus public concern and lead to control agencies such as the police and courts in court taking action. According to this perspective, moral panics develop spontaneously out of a general public concern. Moral panics develop spontaneously out of a general public concern towards behavior that threatens the moral order, or that threatens morality, that threatens stability, that threatens order in a society. According to Stanley Cohen, Cohen suggests that moral panics reinforce established moral values. Now, the established moral values that are there in a society that have been set according to the norms, the customs, the traditions of the society, what the media over here does is the media, through moral panics, keeps on reinforcing them. I mean, for instance, as it says over here, there are the media plays its role in terms of setting moral boundaries. Okay, this is acceptable and this is not acceptable. What's acceptable will be allowed, what's not acceptable will be identified and condemned, and leading to social isolation of that group and whatnot. The idea over here is to reinforce moral order that has already been established in the society. One. Number two, by creating a sense of social and moral solidarity at a time of change and uncertainty. Now, if you remember the डिविएंसी एम्पलीफिकेशन स्पाइरल, तो उसके अंदर रिमेंबर आपके पास जब आप सोशली आइसोलेट कर देते हो उस ग्रुप को जो कि इन्वॉल्व था डिविएंट एक्टिविटीज के अंदर, तो बाकी लोगों के बीच में सॉलिडारिटी आ जाती है. डू वी गेट दिस?
Yes.
Yeah. So, this approach sees the media as a channel that amplifies rather than creates public concern. Remember, I had said this earlier as well. According to the interpretivist approach, the media's role over here is to channel or to channelize or to show what people are concerned about. हम मीडिया को ये ना कहें कि मीडिया ही सारे प्रॉब्लम्स क्रिएट कर रहा है, मीडिया लोगों के कंसर्न को आगे बढ़ा के दिखा रहा है. Media audiences are seen as active and critical consumers rather than passive recipients of media representation. If an audience chooses to ignore media concerns, a deviance amplification spiral does not occur. Do we all understand this? पूरे स्पाइरल के अंदर सी यू इफ यू रिमेंबर द स्पाइरल, बीच में से अगर ऑडियंस, if the audience whom the interpretivist approach claims is pretty active and they're media literate and they are smart enough to be able to differentiate right from wrong, if they choose to ignore media concerns, कहानी खत्म. आपके पास ये स्पाइरल पूरा कंप्लीट नहीं करेगा. This was the first approach, that is the interpretivist approach, in terms of the role media plays in terms of developing, what do you call it, or further highlighting moral panics. The second approach that we have over here is an interesting one, the neo-Marxist approach. Remember, my kids, when we speak about neo-Marxism, we need to keep in mind hegemonic consent. According to the neo-Marxist perspective, they are, on the other hand, interested in how and why moral panics are created by powerful people. According to them, moral panics are created and maintained by powerful people. And this creation and maintenance, I repeat, this creation and maintenance of moral panics by the rich, by the elite, actually works in their favor, right? This helps them maintain their hegemony in the society. Now, I'll give you a very typical desi example over here that would make it easier for you to understand. Do you know what? If the media shows there's more of crime in the society, like we had discussed a couple of minutes back, law enforcement agencies, politicians would be questioned, and when these law enforcement agencies and politicians are questioned, that this would eventually lead to more of people there being more of law enforcement agencies, or more of police, more of rangers being there on roads, right? Not only that, they'd be given more of rights. No, the rights isn't the word. They'd be given more of power. They'd be given more of power, right? And a couple of years back, if you remember, the citizens over here were advised by law enforcement agencies, by the government, कि अगर आपको कोई पुलिस वाला रोड पे रोकता है तो आप रुकें, right? We had time when the law enforcement agencies, they were allowed to fire and shoot someone if they did not stop, if they were asked to stop. The question is, don't you think this gives so much of power to these law enforcement agencies? This policy or this law can actually be abused so much. And guess what? Through your consent, you, the general public, a layman, common people, the public has been told, the public has been reminded that these changes have been made in the legal system to facilitate them, to further protect them for their own security. So it's more like the rich, the powerful, they are creating and then maintaining these moral panics so that they could continue, they could enjoy, they could have the power to them with our consent. It's more like the public is giving them power to do whatever it can in the name of their security. I mean, this was just one example. Do we get this?
जी सर.
Yeah. So
Yes, sir.
New Marxists see moral panics as a political phenomena, the defense of a certain type of moral order defined by a ruling class. Moral panics are an important way for a ruling class to exercise control by focusing condemnation on a particular supposed threat. While moral panics are in some ways manufactured as media sensationalism, this does not mean that they are necessarily deliberately created. At various times, capitalist societies offer up opportunities for moral panics, and elites take advantage of these to criticize those who threaten both moral order and, by extension, ruling class hegemony. Like I said, the capitalist society throws an opportunity. to these rich, and they very well make use of this opportunity. Get it, everyone?
Yes.
Right?
जी
I mean,
सर.
they could say, imagine, they could say, see, we are increasing police over here for your safety, for your security. Do you not want safety? I mean, who would say they wouldn't want safety? Get it? So, another dimension now. For Hall Aol, opportunities for moral panics occur at times of economic, political, and ideological crisis. And in times of economic, political, and ideological crisis, don't you think these moral panics can be used to keep the public distracted? Right? Remember, we studying this under the heading of neo-Marxism. Neo-Marxism, a fancy version of Marxism, a new version of Marxism. Nonetheless, Marxism. The idea over here is the public can be kept distracted. The public can be kept distracted from the real causes of crisis, because remember, according to the Marxists, all of these problems, they are deliberately created by the rich, by the elite, so that they could continue their power, and they could continue the control they have over the society. So the mess ups that are there in the society, in order to keep the public distracted from them in times of, like I said, economic, political, or ideological crisis, these moral panics, according to the neo-Marxist perspective, are used to distract a common man, to distract the general public. So their function is to distract public attention from the real causes of such crisis by generating panics around groups and behaviors that create easily identifiable scapegoats or folk devils. तो scapegoat, again, बलि का बकरा जो आपको आसानी से लगता है, oh, let's distract public's attention by speaking about this, let's create a moral panic about this particular issue. Everyone would get distracted, everyone would be thinking and discussing all of that, and the focus from the problems that are there in a capitalist society, लोगों का उनसे ध्यान ही हट जाएगा. Right? तो these groups are relatively powerless. Now I'm talking about these folk devils जो easily identifiable scapegoats होते हैं. ठीक है? They are relatively powerless and can be represented as a threat, distracting people from a capitalist crisis. The state then deals firmly with the folk devils, showing that it is powerful and that dissent will not be tolerated. Now there's another added advantage to this. You easily identify folk devils, you stereotype, you use them as scapegoats, you punish them, and when you're punishing them, you are setting a lesson for the rest as well. You'll be like, see, if you do not abide by the rules, the regulations, if you do not adhere to the rules and regulations, this is what you'll face. And guess what? The government, the state, the rich, the elite, they're easily able to do so, because आप फोक डेवल किसी तगड़े बंदे को नहीं बनाते. फोक डेवल आप रिलेटिवली पावरलेस लोगों को बना रहे होते हैं. Right? So the state then deals firmly with the folk devils, showing that it is powerful and that dissent will not be tolerated. The real purpose of moral panics is control of the whole population, not just the folk devils. So it's not only about controlling these folk devils, they are there to set a lesson for the rest. They are there, they are identified, they are they're punished, and their punishment is, I mean, the public gets to know about the punishment, and the public in general now knows that they cannot mess up with the social order. If they mess up with the social order, they'd probably have to go through what these folk devils are going through, right? So each panic results in greater levels of control, such as the police being given stronger powers, until a situation is reached where surveillance and control is an integral part of our everyday life in a way that is accepted in order to ensure public safety. This is exactly what I was talking about, which for the new Marxist means maintenance of hegemony. So I hope, does anyone have any questions regarding this though?
जी. No, sir.
Right? If there is no question, I'd like to wrap it up over here. Take good care of yourselves. Stay happy, healthy, safe, and protected. Stay humble. Spread positivity. Spread smiles. All the best. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz, sir. Thank you.
Allah Hafiz, beta.